Welcome to the Wednesday, December the 2nd, 2009 Platting Board. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Anastasia Taylor. Ellen McKay.
Here.
Michael Krieger.
Here.
Jody Moses.
Here.
Carol Stolpe.
Here.
Lendell Story.
Here.
Steve Abel. Ken Fuller. Daniel Young.
Present.
We have a quorum, and the next order of business is approval of action summaries. May I have a positive motion, please? Motion by Mr. Krieger. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Story. Is there any discussion? Is there any objection to the motion? Seeing none, the motion passes and the action summaries are approved. Special order of business. Are there any disclosures?
Yes, I have a disclosure.
Mr. Young.
In the case of S11700-1, my firm has worked for CR Engineering Group as a subcontractor in the past, and my firm has also provided services to Heritage Land Bank. I have not worked on this project, and I have no financial interest in this project. Also, I have fairly extensive subsurface knowledge of this property and the drainages associated with this property.
May I have a positive motion for Mr. Young to participate, please? Mr. Krieger, is there a second? Ms. Stolpe. Mr. Krieger, would you speak to your motion, please?
I didn't hear anything in Mr. Young's disclosures that sounds to me as though he would be disqualified from participating, and I assume that he feels the same way, that he's not disqualified, but is just making those disclosures. And as far as the subsurface conditions, I didn't see anything that put those subsurface conditions at issue in particular one way or the other, and I don't know whether his expertise and what's underneath the ground would bear on the matter before the board, so I intend to support the motion.
Is there any other discussion? Is there any objection to Mr. Young's participation? Seeing none, Mr. Young, you are directed to participate. The next order of business is the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of all matters before the board that do not require a public hearing. All items shall be approved by motion without debate. Does any member wish to remove any item from the consent agenda? Seeing none, may I have a positive motion for approval of the consent agenda. Carol Stolpe.
So moved.
Is there a second? Mr. Young. Is there any objection to approval of the consent agenda? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. The consent agenda is approved, and we move on. There's no old business, so we'll move then to new business. During the new business portion of the agenda, we'll follow the procedure as outlined on the front of the agenda. And that says that after the staff gives their presentation, I will ask for public testimony on the issue, and the petitioner will be the first to speak. They have 10 minutes, of which they may reserve a portion for rebuttal. Representatives of groups such as community councils or PTAs have 5 minutes, and individual have 3 minutes. We keep time with this timer up here in the front. It's green until 1 minute left, and then it turns yellow. You should think about summing it up, and when it turns red, your time is up. When your testimony is complete, you may be asked questions by the board, but you may testify only once on any issue unless you are questioned by the board. Any individual may have appeal rights relating to any action the Platting Board takes, and the outline of the appeal procedure is on the front of the agenda. So, with that, the first case is case S11700-2, Muldoon Estates Subdivision. May we have the staff presentation, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Public comments were received today and in the last few days since the packets were mailed to the board. These comments have been laid on the table in this stapled set, labeled Platting Board, December 2nd, 2009, late comments relating to Muldoon Estates case. In this case, it's probably useful to look at the plat while I speak now, summarizing the issues of the case. For members of the public, page 14 of the packet has a drawing showing the phase plan for this proposed subdivision. Chester Creek runs through the subject property from east to west. The preliminary plat shows a 15-foot wide trail easement being dedicated along the west and south boundaries of proposed Tract C, abutting this greenbelt tract, which is Tract D. The Division of Real Estate Services is the petitioner in this case. They are seeking to subdivide 2 lots as they exist now into 4 tracts with vacation of a 10-foot wide telephone and electric easement and a 25-foot wide stream maintenance and protection easement on both sides of Chester Creek. Also, Real Estate Services is requesting a variance from Anchorage Municipal Code, Title 21-85-030, so as not to be required to construct DeBar Road. Proposed Tract A is zoned B3SL per Assembly Ordinance 2001-182. The preliminary plat shows that proposed Tract B and C are zoned R2M. The special limitations on Tract A makes several restrictions on the property. The special limitations prohibit certain types of businesses, sets the maximum height of any structures at 3 stories or 35 feet. It prohibits additional access points to Muldoon Road. It requires curb cuts and access to be resolved with the State of Alaska Department of Transportation and Public Facilities. The vacation of the 10-foot wide telephone and electric easement is needed to construct 14th Avenue from Muldoon Road to Tract B. Planning recommends approval of the vacation subject to the relocation of this easement in a different location. The vacation and relocation of Chester Creek is part of a creek restoration plan, which is described in the Chester Creek Restoration Muldoon Greenhouse Property Planning Report from October 2007. The proposed realignment of Chester Creek is based on scientific models to ensure that the creek will continue to flow properly. Planning recommends approval of the vacation and relocation of Chester Creek within the proposed Greenbelt Tract, Tract D. The petitioner is seeking a variance from improvement requirements by improvement area to not construct DeBar Road. The department agrees that construction of DeBar Road, which would be classified as a collector street, would not be required if the petitioner in the location where it is not constructed. However, the standard is not met for a variance from improvements to this road in the section where it exists presently, abutting Tract C. So that is to say that the Planning Department recommends that the petitioner be required to look at whether or not any improvements need to be made to DeBar Road in the section along tract where it abuts Tract C. That would be from Boston Street to the end of Tract C. Real Estate Services has requested a phased plan. Phase 1 includes the construction of 14th Avenue to Tract B. Phase 2 includes the construction of a section of DeBar Road and relocating the stream within Tract D. I have a few changes that I'd like to make to the conditions of approval. First of all, on the bottom of page 10, the very, very last line, it says, within 18 months. This is on page 10 at the bottom. It says within 18 months, the last line on that page. It should say within within 60 months. The previous version of this plat, they sought an 18-month approval. With this version of the plat, they're seeking 60-month approval. That is so that they can relocate the stream before the plat is recorded. So that was just an error on my part. There's a few other changes. On page 11, condition 2, it says provide a 10-foot wide telephone electric easement as required by ACS. It should say and CEA. CEA sent in late comments that asked for a 10-foot wide telephone electric easement also. So the addition of and CEA to the end of that condition is required. I'd like to also add condition 14. So this would be a new condition. And the condition would read, remove the label of a 7-foot snow storage easement. I'll repeat that. Condition 14, remove the label of a 7-foot snow storage easement. The snow storage should be taken into account. It will be 7 feet within the right-of-way. There's no need to have an easement overlapping with the right-of-way. It should just be right-of-way. So just the removal of that indicator of the 7-foot snow storage is just a drafting thing that would help. One last change on page 11, so turning back a page again. In order to give the petitioner flexibility to over the assignment of these improvements, it'd be useful to add to condition number 4, add the words resolve the need to. So it would read resolve the need to enter into a subdivision agreement with private development to. The words resolve the need to just gives the petitioner some flexibility about the timing and the improvements that need to be made that are listed below. That is all I have for my presentation. I'd be happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Is there any questions of staff?
Yes, I have some.
Mr. Krieger.
Nice. Okay, I pushed right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin, for a thorough presentation. I have several questions about this plat, if I can raise them. Working backwards, if the department does not recommend the granting of the variance on that Dubar Road segment from Boston east to the end of Track C, is it inconsistent with that to change the language in Condition 4 to resolve the need to? I mean, isn't it pretty clear that there will be a need to improve Dubar Road at 4B as long as that variance isn't granted?
Well, I believe that adding the words resolve the need to private development, that is project management and engineering department, private development, insists on, and you can see in their comments on earlier pages, insists on the improvements to Dubar Road, make sure there's good pedestrian facilities, if there needs to be any public lights. They'd like some flexibility about the timing of when they might install, for instance, the trail on Track C or the pedestrian bridge that would connect to the cul-de-sac south of this subdivision. And resolve the need to is not going to weaken private development's hand in requiring improvements. It's really just a non-issue. It's a matter of semantics as far as the planning department is concerned. To answer your question, those improvements will still need to be made.
Thank you. Follow-up question, Madam. The ADOT was suggesting that there be 85 to 100 feet set aside on that Dubar Road there, and looks like the plat's going forward with a 35 and 35 for a 70-foot wide road on DeBar. What was the department's thinking on in response to the ADOT's suggestion to widen that or allow it to be potentially widened?
I'm going to reread DOT's comments to make sure I have.
It's on page 3 at the bottom, it's like 5A.
There should be, it's an excellent question, and there needs to be a condition, and there isn't, stating that a 15-foot development setback is required on Tract A. That no development setback. We cannot ask for any additional right-of-way dedication to DeBar Road. They've the maximum that we can. The code only allows the municipality to require 35 feet of right-of-way dedication. That's the maximum we can ask for, and we have that. But what we can ask for now is 15 feet more of no development setback, and that would allow DOT, should they one day construct this right-of-way, to have the turning lane and have the sufficient right-of-way that they asked for in that condition. So the department would recommend a condition stating dedicate a 15-foot no development setback on. I'm sorry. It wouldn't say dedicate. It would say show a 15-foot no development setback on Tract A.
Is that on the north
Is that number
boundary?
7?
That would be on the north boundary of Tract A.
Did you read condition number 7?
Oh, yeah, it's there.
Okay.
It's already there? Okay.
It's there. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Follow-up question. On that vacation of the telephone and electrical easement, is that all around the perimeter? Is your intent to vacate it all around the perimeter of all the tracks that are affected, or just on the southern perimeter of tracks A and?
Just on the southern part.
Okay. And just on Tract A?
Let's see. Yes, I believe so. Usually we leave it pretty general. The petitioner works it out with the applicant. Well, we are vacating it. This is true. I'm going to reread the condition myself real quick. Yeah, the condition is just referring to the section that the applicant has asked for the vacation, and they've shown the location of where it's been, where they're asking for the vacation. It's within 14th Avenue. I think the way that the approval is written, the approval of the vacation is written, is fine. Should the board want to add some terminology that within proposed 14th Avenue, that'd be fine. I don't want to limit it to one track just in case it gets confusing, because I don't have the underlying plat in front of me, and we're changing the lot boundaries. I just don't want there to be a, I guess, confusion on that. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all the questions I had.
Any other questions of staff? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing. And is the petitioner's representative available? Ready?
My name is Wendy Wilbur with CRW Engineering, and I'm representing the Municipality of Anchorage, Project Management and Engineering, and Real Estate Services. And with me I have Mike Jokola. What we are putting up now are the existing plat and the plat as we are proposing it. The decision before the Platting Board is really very straightforward tonight. We are not asking for significant changes other than the dedication of a green belt to protect Chester Creek in the long term. Tract D will be a dedicated green belt. What that does is actually creates a smaller Tract C, which is formerly Lot 2, and actually allows for less development. The other change that we're making to this plat is cleaning up the original Lot 1. And Lot 1 actually was a single lot, but it had 2 zones on it. The westernmost was B3SL, and the eastern half was R2M. And all this new plat is doing is actually cleaning that up and creating a lot line there. We aren't really changing much of anything. And again, this will result in lower density development. Not significantly, but it is less development with this new plat than what could previously occur. The new plat is consistent with the comprehensive plan town center. We have the commercial development along Muldoon. We have medium to high density residential, and there are public facilities. The parcel that is furthest to the east and actually just kind of the green and not part of this plat is parkland. This is also consistent with the transportation plan. It's important to note that when you look at the new plat, the pink area of DeBar is dedicated right-of-way. It is not constructed. It is not included in the long-range transportation plan, the capital improvement plan. There are no plans to build that section. This plat does not change that. With either the original plat or the new plat, DeBar Road remains the same. And our proposal is consistent with Title 21. Throughout this process, we started this plat a year ago in 2008, and we have been working with the community council and the public. There has been some concern expressed over the plat, and they would like to see this land become parkland. This platting action does not preclude this becoming parkland in the future. It has no impact on that decision. This is not a zoning change. This is not a land use change. This is merely dedicating that green belt to protect Chester Creek into the long term. So with that, I would actually like to reserve the rest of our time for rebuttal. Thank you.
7 minutes and 22 seconds for rebuttal. Are there any questions of Ms. Wilbur? Is there anyone else wishing to speak in case S11700-2, Muldoon Estate Subdivision? If you could come forward and state your name for the record and spell it.
I'm Ainsley Phillips, AINSLIEBHILLIPS. I'm with Northeast Community Council. I have been involved in this project for over 10 years. I'm trying to keep my temper down. The comment that was just made by the petitioner that this replat does not impact the property's future use is, in our opinion, after many agonizing hours and much research, to not be a statement that we find to be correct. The history of the property, and Mr. Young alluded to the fact that he is aware of the subsurface conditions of the property. That piece of property has been looked at historically by every developer in this town and rejected because of the subsurface conditions of the property. The Dubai Road extension between Muldoon and Boston has been on and off the books for many years and turned down basically because of the glaciation of Chester Creek at that point. And I can point out to the map for you exactly where that is. The statement that there is no intention to put Dubai Road through and it's not on anybody's list is also, in our opinion, incorrect, as it has appeared on two lists, one being the CIP list that was sent back to Northeast Community Council, and the second being on the H2H E-City plan. The only reason they cannot and has historically not put Dubai Road through is because the creek is there and the problems that are associated with that creek. Back in the late 90s, when Sheila Selkirk was city planner, she fell on her sword basically over this piece of property, and the city closed. There was a dirt road availability to drive from Muldoon back to Boston, and it was used as basically a four-wheel track. The city closed it off. They came to us, the community, and Gateway Rotary was given the right to develop that portion between Muldoon and Boston as what's referred to as the A.R. Muldoon West area. We got money from United Way, the federal justice programs Weed and Seed, Anchorage Neighborhood Housing, and individuals. And we develop that into a focal point for Muldoon that goes in line with the long range of the 20-year pedestrian enhancement act on Muldoon, from what we refer to as from the curve to the swerve, from Muldoon and Tudor all the way out to Bartlett High School. We've constructed the Muldoon concrete sign mill. There's a plaza there with benches. We brought in fill that was donated. We planted grass seed, we planted trees, we planted flowers, and we put it on our long range to develop that. It's the east side's access point that someday in the future, when the military abandon the military land back there, that would be our access to the Chugach State Park, similar to Flat Top, for the hordes of people that the 2020 plan says will be put in the 80% of development is destined to go into Northeast Community Council area. So we need more green space. So we started planning this in '96. I have on tape, and I can supply it, Brad Dunker saying, yes, this is about putting Dubai Road through. They're trying to disguise this, and tonight it wasn't brought up, which I was surprised. They keep saying it's for the fish. They come to the community council and say, it's for the fish. The oil and gas separator under Dubai Road, Muldoon Road at Dubai, doesn't allow the fish fry to get up the creek. Therefore, we have to change it because we have to put this in. We have to relocate the creek down there. The developer of the Alaska Village property, Mark Pfeffer, put this in his project back in, like I said, the late 90s, early 2000s, of moving the creek so he could make the property on the northeast corner of the Alaska villages where the creek goes across. He could develop that. Those are the money-making lots of that subdivision by moving the creek where it goes under the bar, under Muldoon, along the bar extension. There are so many inconsistencies in the staff report that I've heard tonight and read. One of them being that Sheila Selkirk, Mike Gutierrez, and myself met with the city over a year ago about this, and we were told at that time that the citizens would be involved in the planning of this, and the Chester Creek Advisory Committee was supposed to be formed. The first meeting was called for November 24th. That was less than 15 days before this hearing. We feel that we have not been involved. Yes, they've come to our meetings, but they come with the final. This is what we're going to do. Not, what do you want to do? What are your ideas? We have many ideas. We feel that they have been totally disingenuous and they're trying to pull the wool over everybody's eyes that this is all about putting Dubai Road through and limiting the possibilities of developing that into the park, as was attended by an ordinance municipality a year ago in 2008, which someone will read to you later. That is in there. there's so many items like the snow storage that I could go on and on. But it is a well-disguised attempt to tell you it's about something else. When we thought about putting the Bow Road through and taking, like I said, the right-of-way, that was going to the park, it'll limit it. So we ask you to reject this replat.
Are there any questions for Ms. Phillips?
Manager. Ms. Phillips, are you representing the views of the Northeast Community Council?
I am.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Krieger.
Any other inconsistencies that you would bring up besides the first one that you mentioned?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you, sir.
Are there any other inconsistencies that you'd like to mention besides the first one?
Yes, there are several.
What are they? Brief.
Well, one of them is the town center plan. There is no town center plan. It was never filed by the developer. In the 2020 plan, they don't mention that one of the things is also the snow storage right-of-way that Mr. Grafflin alluded to and the 25-foot stream setback. Those are mandated. There's always a 25-foot step back. So there's so much in here that we needed more time and wanted to sit down with HDR and all the other people and say, all right, explain this to us. What if we did this? What if we did that? At a meeting last night with Bill Spencer, we threw out some ideas with him that if we'd had a year to do that, maybe we would have approved this replat. Maybe it is in our best interest. We don't think so because we feel the Bow Road is the whole intent is to put the Bow Road through. And like I said, we have documentation that we've been told that. And we just feel that this is another attempt by the municipality to disguise what they want to do by throwing this out there.
You're repeating yourself now.
I know. I'm sorry. I haven't had enough to go through and list all of them, but I'd be happy to do that at a later date for you, item by line item.
Any other questions for Ms. Phillips? Thank you for your testimony. Anyone else wishing to testify in case S11700-2, Muldoon Estates? Please come forward and state your name for the record.
Good evening. My name is James Starzyk. Last name is spelled S-T-A-R-Z-E-C. And I'm the secretary for the Northeast Community Council.
You'd still just get 3 minutes.
Exactly.
Northwest Community Council gets, we've already heard from the representative.
Yes, ma'am. All I would like to do is enter into the record our resolutions from our November 19th meeting. I apologize for not having those placed into your packet due to circumstances beyond our control. That wasn't available at the time. So I'd just like to read this as we have it written. A resolution concerning case 511-7002 from the Northeast Community Council meeting of November 19th, 2009. We, the Northeast Community Council, hereby resolve to reject the replatting of this tract. Discussion on the floor additionally stated that we resolve the following. The Northeast Community Council will instruct the Planning Department not to make any decisions on the replat or possible land swaps until this body gets further information and not consider the potential land swap as condition for this replat. Also, I would like to enter into the record excuse me, 1 moment. I'm sorry, that's all I have.
Is there any questions for Mr. Starzyk? Mr. Krieger?
Thank you. Through the chair, Mr. Starzyk, you mentioned a potential land swap. I haven't heard anything about a potential land swap yet. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, within the last month, a discussion has begun between Municipal Light and Power and the Heritage Land Bank to swap 20 acres of Centennial Park located on the north end of Muldoon Road in exchange for, I believe it's 16 acres compromising of tracks A, B, and C, I believe is the, and this is something that has just begun to be discussed, and it's really not had any movement so far. But in light of these plans that are being discussed, we feel that our community council could use more time to understand where this replat would fit in with this land swap or vice versa.
May I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
I'm still not clear. What are you suggesting, that some of the land that's affected by the plats that are under discussion tonight is being discussed as being swapped for some other land, or is it?
Yes, that's correct.
So you think you've heard a rumor or something that either tract A, B, C, or D is going to be traded out to by whom to whom?
I believe we have other council members here that are more well versed in this on this matter. Could give you specific people that have brought this to the council's attention.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Mr. Starzak?
I'm sorry. I have a follow-up question.
Hang on.
So the council passed a resolution urging this platting board to reject this plat. I got that part right, okay?
Yes, sir.
So if we reject this plat, then the municipality could sell tracts A. Well, there wouldn't be any tracts. They could sell lot 1 and 2 to whomever they wanted to sell it to.
Yes, sir.
And it could be to a strip mall, it could be to anybody they wanted to sell it to, because at least some of lot 1 is zoned commercial. So would that be in the community's best interest? I mean, from your perspective I know you're not representing the community, but
certainly
you're a resident out there, I guess. Would that be in the community's best interest to take no action and allow the municipality to dispose of those lots without further development?
I believe the community council's intent is that this resolution be held. Thank you. That this resolution, this replat, be held and considered in light of this land swap. We would just like to understand more in depth the implications of this land swap, or of this replat on the land swap, or the land swap on the replat. The note I've just been given here, it says that the land swap was introduced to the community council at our last meeting by John Rada from Parks and Rec and Russ Oswald.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for your time.
Anyone else wishing to testify? Case S11700-2 Muldoon Estates.
Hello, my name is Stuart Grenier, Grenier. I'm also a resident of Muldoon, longtime resident, and I'm on the board of the Northeast Community Council. I would just like to point out that our council area is going to be the highest densely populated part of Anchorage, and people have a desire to have something remain. We've just been hit with this tsunami of building in our area, and the greenhouse property was assumed by many people to probably be part of a park of some sort. And they just came to us with these plats, and the council in general and other people in the community thought that they were not consulted. There's a question as to how much the community was consulted on everything that's happened to date. Also, if this does become a park, the replatting of the creek as it's set up in this replat may not be conducive with a park plan. And as you may know, there are people who are hoping wholeheartedly, and they aren't necessarily from our park area, that the entire area become a park from Muldoon Road all the way to the military reservation, as is called the Muldoon Park Strip. So we have to remember that Muldoon was a separate entity for some time, a long time ago, and the concept of Muldoon as a place kind of requires that there be a central area. This land is potentially that central area. It has a tradition. The greenhouses was a wonderful, open, privately owned but rather public area. And then when we saw all these plot lines come in front of us, and a lot of people felt like we weren't consulted at all, I feel that if there can be at least a delaying action, if not outright refusal, there will be time for people to get better organized and to figure out about the land swap that has been proposed or other options that are coming up soon. So that's where we're at. We would like to have more voice in this whole process, and we feel that we were not included to the degree necessary. A lot of it's our own fault. We're all volunteers. We don't get paid to do this, and basically we keep getting orchestrated by the municipality. I've seen it in my years on the council, and now we see all this construction that's already happened, and our last chance to have something that could be very important for future generations. You've got to remember we're going to have a really high-density population, and this land is our last chance to have a focal point from Malden Road, which would be key to any town center concept or town square. So that's why people really care about this property, and I think you're going to find that out the longer that they get to be more informed about it.
Thank you, Mr. Grenier.
Madam Chair.
Any questions for Mr. Grenier?
Yes, Mr. Grenier. You're a member of the board, I believe you said.
Yes, I am a member of the board.
Northeast Community Council. Could you lay out in a, this may not be a fair question, just right off the cuff, could you just lay out the timeline of this, of these recommended changes from your perspective, from the Community Council perspective? I mean, Ms. Phillips mentioned it, and then now you've mentioned it, and I don't have it in, I don't quite understand the timeline of when you learned that the municipality was looking for some changes, particularly it sounds like the Bar Road, but also these others.
Okay, well, I can say this. I can't answer the question specifically. I do know they've been talking about the Bar Road being pushed through for years and years and years, and that is, the council is very much against that. But the idea, I really don't have the information in front of me to tell you about the timeline. All I can tell you is the gut instinct that a lot of people had when this was presented and it was called attention to at the council. And they said, wait a minute, I had a friend in the library who said, wait, didn't they promise to leave that as a park? The greenhouse property is going to get left as a park, wasn't that a promise? But as you know, when you're dealing with a bureaucracy and dealing with the general public, one is highly organized, as sharp as a knife, and the other has a collective memory which is questionable.
When did the Community Council meet on this issue? Was that the
It's been meeting on this issue for, well, if you may remember, 4 or 5 years ago, I had the Malden Town Center concept in the Anchorage Daily News, and then a bunch of developers and property owners got angry because they had, their property included in some concept that had never been canceled on. So, and there's been talk about, well, Malden, they're going to have all this, and there's going to be all this development, and there's going to be these kinds of parks, this and that, included in the concept. And then what we see is a lot of development happening, and more development happening in places that we didn't expect it. And then here we see this undeveloped land, and it obviously appears to be with a history of, pseudo-public use. It just seems like a no-brainer that this is where we should make our stand, where we have a chance. Because, of course, once it's sold off or bought in private hands, then things aren't going to happen. So it's an opportunity which I hope you guys will help us not squander.
Thank you. Mr. Krieger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Grenier, thank you for your comments. Included in the information that's before the board is a statement that the original tract consisted of 28 acres, and that in coordination with the Great Land Trust, the easternmost 11.5 acres was conveyed to the municipal parkland. Is that consistent with your understanding?
Yes, I know the eastern half of the military reservation would become a park and will be dedicated as parkland if it isn't already.
Okay. So we're not talking about the entire Muldoon greenhouse area, at least not all 28 acres. We're talking about the westernmost 16 acres.
Yes.
Isn't that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank
And I would like to point out that that's the key. Remember, if you're going to have a community, you need to have a visual center, right?
I didn't understand what you did. You say that again?
If you're going to have a community, a visual center is rather necessary.
A visual?
A visual center. In other words, something you can see from the road.
Okay.
Or if we lose the plots in question as far as my hope that this will eventually be a Muldoon park strip, then we basically end up with a pocket park. This could be our town center, basically. Just like the town square, remember the big battle they had in downtown Anchorage. You've got to remember, 30 years down the way, Muldoon may be the center of gravity for Anchorage because of the population that's being forced on us. Remember, Muldoon Northeast Community Council never approved the Anchorage 2020 plan because who wants to have a bunch of high-rises shoved in their backyard or forced public, their single-family residents turned into condos. So that's where I'm coming from. That's why people are more excited about this and a little more passionate. And as you'll see behind me, it's not just the people in the neighborhood area. The concept of Muldoon is pretty wide. And matter of fact, there's at least as much interest in this project because of the question of this park strip and the potential of having a greenbelt there from the Scenic Foothills Community Council, which is at least a third of a mile south. But remember, Muldoon is a collective area, and people recognize that this is our town center. So that's why there's probably going to be some people digging in their heels on this.
Paul, I appreciate your comments. I just wanted to clarify that there are 11.5 acres that have been set aside for parkland, according to the information that we've got. And is that right? That's correct, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Grenier? Mr. McLaughlin.
Madam Chair, I wanted to correct something that was said just now about the location of the park. I have with me Assembly Ordinance 2009-1, and it shows that Lot 3, Muldoon Estates Subdivision Plat 2007-18, 11.47 acres is dedicated parkland. Lot 3, if you look on your plat, is not a part of this plat. It's east of the plat. It's east of it's outside of the boundaries, right. Just for point of order.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Bob Repke, R-E-U-P-K-E. I'm the treasurer of the Northeast Community Council. We're very much against this plat, and we would like you to either reject it or postpone it. The issue came up about the back 11 or 13 acres. That land there is undevelopable because it's very poor soils, and it's my understanding that we're going to be ball fields back there. And what we hope is not going to happen is that the barrel is going to be cut through and destroy the neighborhood back there so folks can get back there. We would really like to see 14th Avenue go through. Moving of the creek, we're very much against that too because we feel this is going to be, they're going to move the creek so they can have some commercial development there. About 2 weeks ago, we had about 45 folks come out there and we walked the property all the way from the front to the back. And it's really a beautiful area, and we would really like to see it be a park. And I think it also, James mentioned that there is talk of a land swap between Centennial Park and land swap to the greenhouse property. And we just heard about this about a week ago. So again, I would appreciate it if you would reject the plat or at least postpone it at this time. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Repke?
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify?
That's way up there. Good evening. I'm Michelle Pamer. That is Michelle with one L, Pamer. I'm here from the Chugach Foothills Scenic Park Council. We would really like you to know from that council that so we are entitled, excuse me, let me get this right, because it is the Chugach Foothills and Scenic Park. We are the Scenic Foothills Council, okay? And it got changed several years ago. I've worked with that board for a long time, and there are so many of us that have looked at that greenhouse land as, oh, please help to open that up as park. Our children are desperate for places for skateboarding, for bike jumping, for just walking through that area. They are begging us on that southeast end where the Tudor Muldoon curve is in there to please get more parkland for them so that they can move forward. I have been a volunteer for that Chugach Foothills Park. I generally put in about 150 free hours a summer. And I am one of the head people of that park in there and head volunteers. I'd like you to know that that Chugach Foothills Park is so overrun now that we often have 400 people using that park. I work closely with Parks and Recs. There's no pay involved whatsoever. This has all been documented to them in pictures of all the things that are going on, and we're desperately in need of more park usage on that side of town. As I leave here right now, I am expected to be in another meeting on the Pioneer Drive site alone that borders that land, and we're just desperate for more parkland on that whole side of town. On Muldoon Park, that is right by Carr's Shopping Center on Northern Lights, it simply is just a walking trail park. We hope to have some ball fields from our representative. Harry Crawford has worked hard on the land back behind the theater in there that hopefully will allow him to get some ball fields. But keep all this in mind. I walked this land several weeks ago. It is glorious. Think about the most gorgeous Currier and Ives Christmas card scenes that you could get. And then picture a great big beaver dam in there with logs this side, with water flowing, there were mallards swimming in the creek. And I don't even know how to describe it to you if you can just visually see it. And it is land that is easily transversible. And if the front part of it could be turned into a skateboard park and a bike jumping area, we already have children. Literally, these are latchkey kids who are out there collecting signatures for this. And they're doing it properly. And we have not coerced them. They're reading parts of our Chugach Foothills Park by where they are trying to jump and where it's extremely unsafe. And so they want us to move forward as adults for them to help to open more of this land. That's really all I have to say.
Any questions for Ms. Tamer?
I will tell you that Northeast Council has invited the Chugach Foothills Council in MS and the Rabbit Creek Council in MS, and tomorrow night Northeast Council will be speaking at our Chugach Foothills meeting. Okay? Thank you. I've got to go.
Anyone else wishing to testify?
Good evening. My name is William Toyer. My last name is spelled Theuer. I'm a volunteer with the Park Committee at Scenic Foothills Community Council. I'd like to speak against the adoption of this request by the petitioner, and I would also encourage you, as you reflect on community needs across Anchorage, and specifically in this northeast corner of Anchorage, what really does Muldoon need? Another strip mall or an open space park for our children? And I appreciate your time this evening.
Is there any questions, Mr. Toyer?
My name is Elaine Bales, and I'm been a resident of Chigwatch Foothills since 1976. And I have seen Muldoon Road become nothing but ugly on-site condos and strip malls. And I really feel that I do not want to see DeBar Road punched through. I want to park for our children for the future. I want to preserve what little land we have left for future generations. And I don't want this creek to be disturbed, and I want it to be parkland. Thank you.
Any questions from Ms. Bales? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Terry Penn, Penn, 2 N's. I'm not involved with the community council. In fact, I just heard about this a couple weeks ago through the newspaper. But I was born and raised here in Anchorage, and you drive through Muldoon, it reminds me of Wasilla. The stores and the strip malls that are along the side of that street. You come to the end of DeBar in Muldoon, and you look straight ahead, and you've got a nice focal point. That would make a really great park. You have a high density area. When you think about living here in Anchorage, 2 places that I come to mind throughout the years that you didn't want to live in was Mountain View and Muldoon. Now, Mountain View has actually been beautified with new homes and landscaping that's going on. Muldoon, that's not happening. Benches and lights don't do it. I think you've got a community council people that are concerned about the areas that they live in. And I think you need to stand back and listen to their concerns. They live there. They raise their kids. Like I said, I've lived on the east side of town my whole life, and I think their concerns should be listened to, and that's kind of it.
Any questions for Ms. Penn?
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify in case S11700?
Madam Chair, board members, my name is David Dunsmore. I'm Chief of Staff in the Office of Representative Pete Peterson, who is the state representative for the Northeast Anchorage and Muldoon area. The representative couldn't be here tonight, so he asked me to come and just briefly share his thoughts and his support for his neighbors and his community's efforts to build the Muldoon Park Strip on the land that has previously been designated as parkland and the land that is part of this replat, as expressed by the unanimous resolution of the Northeast Community Council. I believe that happened on October 15th. This area is, much of it is already a de facto park and used by the neighbors for cross-country skiing or dog walking. And that's one of the reasons why it's important that the whole strip be made and designated into a park. Is it's been spoken earlier, some of the plans for the area that's currently designated as a park were to make into ball fields or other sports facilities. But right now that's not feasible because that would take away land that's already being used for dog walking, cross-country skiing, hiking, and more free-range park activities. If the park land were to be bigger, that would allow sports facilities as well as trails and hiking facilities. Also, this is designated, this whole area as park is very consistent with municipal policy. In 2006, the municipality adopted a comprehensive obesity plan, and one of the main elements of it was to encourage the more physical activity through improving our park system, and making the Muldoon Park Strip would provide an outlet for people to to exercise and stay in shape in the Muldoon area. In this area, there are no major parks. A couple miles to the north, there's Centennial Park. Several miles to the west, there's Russian Jack and Unaca Valley parks. But in this area, there are a few neighborhood parks, and they are overburdened because this is one of the most densely populated parts of town, and they need a major park facility. As far as why it's important to have the access on Muldoon Road, I would refer you to the maps surrounding this area. And if the only parkland is the area in the back, I decided to look to see how people who don't live immediately in that area would have to drive to access that, or either drive or walk to access that parkland. If you're coming up, if you're coming up, if you live south of DeBar Road, you would have to drive up Muldoon Road. I just said, look at the maps, you'd have to wind back through the side streets to get over there. Those are neighborhood streets there. There's no parking in that area. And if you're coming from a northern area, you'd have to wind through East 12th Court and Boston Street and over to the Cross Point Loop neighborhood, where that's neighborhood land. There's not parking available for park visitors. And again, the representative thanks you all for your service, and thanks everyone for coming out and testifying, and hopes you will consider the community's desire to see that land turned into a park. I just have a letter from the representative to the mayor about this project. I'll give you the hand out.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Dunsmore? Mr. Krieger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Dunsmore, for your comments. Do you or the representative think that this platting board has the authority to decide whether or not the municipality is going to put a park on track on Lot 1 or Lot 2 as opposed to developing it? Because
I think that's a legal question. My understanding is I think the Assembly has to designate parkland, but I may be wrong about that. But it is our understanding that this board is supposed to consider the effect of platting decisions on the community and consider municipal public policy and the effects of the representative is just asking that you, in making your decision here, consider the community's desire to see this land turned into a park and to consider the municipal public policy with regards to obesity and encouraging use of public facilities to fight obesity.
Follow-up question? Could you look at that map on the left side there, Mr. Dunsmore? Do you see that part in green that the first speaker, the petitioner, indicated that was going to be dedicated as a green belt? Is that inconsistent with your understanding of the plan before the Platting Board?
I don't think that's inconsistent. Again, the representative supports the efforts of the community to see that entire area turned into a park. He would support that whole area being made into a park.
Mr. Young?
Thank you. I'm confused. When you talked about the traffic having to go through circuitous routes, are you suggesting that 14th Avenue would not handle the traffic?
Well, 14th Avenue is, I think it's a two-lane street. Also, I don't know if it goes all the way to the area that's currently designated as a park. My understanding is it's only the eastern acres that are designated as a park, so that would most likely require going back into turf court.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Dunsmore? Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify in case S117002?
Good evening. My name is Brad Dunker. I'm the Creeks Community Development Manager for the municipality, and I'd like to talk a little bit about the creek aspect of the project. I run a program for the municipality called Salmon in the City, and the program is a completely grant-funded program that goes out and raises money for creek restoration projects, such as the one that we're talking about tonight. And one of the aspects of that we look at when we go out for these projects is really vetting the decision to go after grant funds through a group called the Watershed Task Force. It's a group that I facilitate, made up of 15 or so agencies, federal, state, and local agencies that deal with land issues and habitat issues, but also with local nonprofit organizations. They all sit there, we talk about these projects before we decide to go after grant funding for them. So really my role on this project is more of a grant funder and then helping this project alleviate some of the issues that we've been working on. Like I said, my role is really to focus on the creek aspects of the project. So I know there was a statement earlier quoting me, supposedly saying something about a road project. My job is with creeks, with the municipality. So that's simply just not true. But also I wanted to talk about portions of the project that we're really discussing. You can see the part of the creek where the track goes down on the plan there. The Greenbelt track closest to Muldoon Road is to relocate the creek. I know there's a lot of concern about the road project potentially being built in the future. Actually, there's a portion of the creek that will remain in the road right-of-way, according to the existing plan. So, and that's the portion to the east. So, the creek project really kind of is a standalone. The other aspect of this is developing the creek will hopefully resolve some negotiation issues that we do have on the property. Should this land, be developed in any way, shape, or form, it will be better for the creek itself. It preserves the 25-foot setback that is, mandatory in municipal code, and it gives the creek that greenbelt buffer that, a lot of people have really, expressed a need for, along all of our creeks here in town. The last aspect of it is really flood control. We put a lot of emphasis on flood control projects throughout the municipality. This is an opportunity for us to continue, what we do in those regards, and also to, develop awareness and, build community around the creeks. And this is a good opportunity to do that. You can see there's a lot of passion and opinions about it, and a lot of passion and opinions about our greenbelts in Anchorage. And we hope that we can continue the dialogue. So with that, thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Dunker? Mr. Young.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony, for being here tonight. I have a question about the creek. As the creek turns from the northernmost part of the property and heads south, it looks like the topography on the map shows that it goes through a ridge. Have you considered that, and do you have any discussion about that area?
I believe the design team is going to talk about that probably in their rebuttal. But there's a lot of consideration that goes on. All the projects go through a full design, so all those are taken into consideration. The ridge on the, I believe, is what you're talking about is back towards
farther south. There's a small ridge that goes from east to west right there.
If you look at an aerial photo, there's actually a concrete slab there on the property, and that would be part of the project, would actually be to remove that concrete slab and then put the creek in the channel that will go through the greenbelt.
Thank you. And in that same area, extending north and south, it looks like there's a relatively steep ridge on the east side according to the topography. And has anybody looked at the adequacy of a 25-foot setback, or if that's adequate for such a steep slope?
Yeah, there's, that's actually located, I believe, on parcel B of the plat. If I'm looking at this correctly, parcel B is really that ridge for the most part. And if you see the greenbelt area down there, it's actually set up, the track is set at 75 feet in that area. So the municipal code requires a minimum of 25-foot setback, so you can't have any development within a creek within 25 feet. That's just the municipal code requirement.
I understand that. And my question is that 25 feet adequate in this area adjacent to Track B?
We're proposing 75 in that area. I think 75 is much better for the creek. I mean, obviously, the more distance that you get, development away from a creek, the better it is for the water quality, the riparian habitat. The vegetation along the creek is actually very important to salmon populations. It keeps the water temperature down. It provides them shade and cover. So, it's kind of a case of the more the merrier.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Dunker? Mr. McLaughlin?
Through the Chair, Mr. Young, I wanted to respond to your question. I spoke with Sharon Walsh and Don Kiefer, engineers with private development, the project management engineering department, and they said that they review many things, but their mandate more than as much as the others is looking at drainage. And they've stated that they would not allow any outfall or drainage from the commercial or the residential tracts into the stream green belt. The intention is to ensure that there would be no development that would cause stormwater runoff into the stream.
Thank you. Mr. Krieger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Following up on Mr. Young's question, and maybe this is to staff too, in the watershed management services comments at 8A3, they say, quote, advisory note, the Anchorage Assembly has approved a new ordinance requiring a 50-foot setback from each side of the stream. So I was confused by that, but I thought I asked too many questions before you started out, so now that it's come up again, can you help me out with this? Because it looks to me like on the plat, you've got a 25-foot stream maintenance and protection easement on either side of I guess, the center of this creek. Mm-hmm. But we've got somebody at Watershed saying that the Assembly has now got a 50-foot requirement on either side. So is that an error, or is it just something that...
Through the Chair, it is an error on watershed management's part. The Assembly has adopted individual chapters of new Title 21, but they won't take effect until all the chapters have been adopted and they've all been vetted to make sure that they comply with one another. And once they're all adopted in that final look, then they would take effect all at once as a whole. And there are proposed changes in the new code, but we're working with the regulations that are in effect now.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Anyone else wishing to testify in case S11700-2, Muldoon Estates subdivision?
Hello, my name is Bill Rice. I'm an engineer with the Fish and Wildlife Service, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and I've been involved with this project for the last 4 years. I'm here mainly in case you guys have any technical questions for fish and wildlife habitat. I do want to point out that page 65 from our office, we have a letter in support of this dedicated greenbelt and creek relocation. And again, to reiterate what Brad has already mentioned, that relocating this creek would have benefits to fish passage, as well as would take about 50 to 60% of the creek out of the Duval right-of-way. The rest would remain within the right-of-way limits, and that it does have significant benefits for flood control within that area, as well as for fish and wildlife habitat. We're very positive in looking at the formation of this dedicated green belt, and hopefully it'll be something that'll be there in perpetuity for the local community. If there are any technical questions, I can take them now.
Any questions for Mr. Rice? Mr. Krieger, is that an old one, or are you?
Oh, I wasn't old, but I'm sorry. Can you show us on the map how 65% of that stream is going to remain, or because it looks to me like if you cut due south, at the southernmost portion, you'd still have a large portion of the stream on the western side remaining in DeBar Road.
Yes.
So the public can't see that, but I don't know if we can get that up. Can you turn around and show the public where you were showing us so everybody's on the same? Thank you, sir. Mr.
Mr. Young?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Rice, thank you for your presentation tonight. Could you address the concept of what if we don't approve this creek relocation tonight? What are the benefits or the detriments of leaving the creek where it is compared to moving it?
Yes, well, I guess one of the things here is financially this is all grant funded. Some of the main funding is through a DEC grant with water quality grant that is, I believe, is going to expire within the next 18 months or so. You might check with PM&E on that. But all those grants have expiration dates, and because of the complications in the design process and getting permits and going through that entire process, we're up against our windows on that, the ability to actually move the creek. And there's some good coordinations with DOT that are for next summer that we'd be able to take advantage of. If the creek was left where it was, you would still have flooding events on the north side of the creek and in the DeBar intersection. 100-year flood events still inundate the intersection in that general area, as well as glaciation problems there. So while some of that could be fixed by just replacing the culvert, you still would not be able to fix all of the flood issues that surround that area because of how development has happened there already. And moving the creek would solve many of those issues for flooding events. For one of the other reasons that there is a water quality grant, it was one of the main funders, was that to move the creek away from that intersection would improve the water quality for Chester Creek because of all the sanding and de-icing and those types of events that take place around the corner there, and this would move it away from those areas. So you still have a pretty good barrier to fish passage, and that probably wouldn't change. And you'd still have water quality issues for the long term, and you'd still have flood issues. Fish habitat-wise, the new creek would have a little more diversity of habitat, and perhaps a little bit of more spawning habitat for different types of fish. Right now, the area that the creek's in right now is real good rearing habitat for juveniles. So that wouldn't change as much. We wouldn't be one of the big changers in the decision process. But it's mainly the fish passage issues and also the fact that if we're going to get a dedicated greenbelt for the creek that's much wider than what's in current code. And it'd be more like something that you'd have around Campbell Creek and have much wider riparian area and a lot more area for the creek to be set in. And hopefully through this it'd be amenity for the local community in the future. And it really isn't. I mean, the city bought this whole property years ago from the people that did own it. Otherwise, we wouldn't have this opportunity to move the creek at currently.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question through the chair. On the section that runs north and south immediately west of Tract B, is there a possibility that the stream could be located or relocated on the eastern part of that boundary so that there would be an inadequate vegetation buffer, such as 25 feet may not be enough?
Along the eastern side of Tract B?
No, the eastern side of the green belt corridor. So I don't know where the stream is going to go except that within the green belt corridor. So if it was on the eastern side of the corridor, where you're pointing, is there a possibility the stream could be located far enough east that there would not be an adequate buffer from that ridge on the east side?
I think the current designs are adequate for that. They would try to keep I think the current design tries to keep a minimum 25 feet away from both edges when the creek is curving. But if you look at the creek as more of a corridor for flooding and that sort of thing, then it should be able to pass those without impinging to one side or the other of the green belt. So, yeah, there should be enough room there.
Thank you. I have no other questions.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Rice? Thank you. Francis?
Through the chair, I'd like to respond to Mr. Young's last question. I have in my hands the Chester Creek Restoration Muldoon Greenhouse Property Planning Report. It was prepared by KPB Architects. The client was the Anchorage Parks Foundation. So the location of the stream has been studied. In here, there are all kinds of charts that I don't understand that talk about the stream cross sections and the type of vegetation that would be, the type of seeding that would be planted along either side of the creek. So the location of the creek was chosen very deliberately. The future location or the boundaries of the Greenbelt tract. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Are there any other persons to testify in case S11700-2 Muldoon Estates subdivision?
Yes, good evening. My name is Clifford Penn, P-E-N-N, and longtime Alaskan as well, East Sider. If I could take just a moment, I'd like to take a look at the map we haven't seen yet of what they're proposing. Wasn't able, there wasn't enough guides to show what's going on. I'd have to say that I would, obviously, everybody keeps not referring to it, but it keeps coming up. The whole thing's about DOT, the whole thing's about the DeBar Road and pushing it through somewhere, and that for some reason, and that up to another park area or up to the military land so we can get into the H2H discussions and all the rest of those as well. I would ask the Assembly to deny or not grant the replatting of this proposal this time, and due to the possibilities. They move the creek out of the way so that, as I just discussed, they can have the right-of-ways where they need them to have the right to be able to punch a road through, and that's exactly where they're going with it.
Any questions for Mr. Penn? Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify? In case S11700-2 Muldoon Estate subdivision. Anyone at all? Would the petitioner like to use their rebuttal time?
Thank you. I would like to refocus back on the platting action and the purview of this action. And the land swap is outside of the purview of this action. Whether the existing plat remains or the new plat comes into effect or is postponed, that has no bearing on the land swap. That process can move forward separately. This action does not preclude that from happening. What I would like to point out is this plat is an insurance policy. If the park land swap does not go through, there is a dedicated green belt. The densities are a little bit less, and we provide good connectivity to that 12-acre parkland that was already dedicated through that Tract D green belt and through trail easements. This plat was originally submitted in 2008, and we actually pulled the plat partly in response to some concerns by the Army Corps of Engineers, and that had to do with the DeBar Road right-of-way. They would like one of the more pristine sections of that creek to remain in DeBar Road, and we have accommodated that. DeBar Road right-of-way is dedicated. It is dedicated in the existing plat. It is dedicated in the new plat. There is no change. It is not in the long-range transportation plan. If a road is not in the long-range transportation plan, it actually cannot obtain funding until that plan is amended, and then it has to go through a public process. The long-range transportation plan goes through 2027. It's not there right now. So there is no hidden agenda. The agenda and the purpose of this plat was to dedicate a creek greenbelt. The underlying uses on the lot lines really aren't changing, except that they're getting divided by that greenbelt. When we had originally submitted this plat in 2008, public notices were mailed. We did attend the Northeast Community Council, and at that time there were no objections. I also have a resolution by the Northeast Community Council dated April 17, 2008, that supported the dedication of the easternmost 12 acres, which are actually outside of this plat. At no time did they object to the rest of the plat going through, which would be our original plat. So I would ask you to consider what this platting action is about, and that is dedicating a green belt. Again, we're not really changing. Lot 2 is still Tract C. Lot 1 is now Tract A and Tract B. We haven't changed zoning, we haven't changed uses, and we've reduced densities. But we have provided a green belt that people can use, that they can get to the other parkland. And with that, I guess I would just close with, we concur with Planning Department's conditions. We have no objections to any of those, and I'm happy to answer any further questions.
Any questions for Ms. Stolp? Ms. Wilbur? I'm going to ask Mr. McLaughlin this question, but I thought since you're up there that I might ask, because I do admit to some confusion now about these issues. I thought I understood it. I thought I had it all figured out when I came to the meeting tonight after my reading, but I don't feel that way anymore. In the department recommendations under 4B, it says on page 11, it says approval of the plat for 60 months subject to improved DeBar Road where abuts Tract C in accordance with AMC so-and-so. Improvement requirements by improvement area. What does that mean?
I'll walk over here.
This section is dedicated right-of-way. There is no road. This section is an existing road, and that's what the condition refers to.
So there would be no connection. There would be no road west on that pink area.
Why is there a need to improve it?
I think it had to do, and the reason I think we added the words resolve is what kind of pedestrian access and what is the need to, what are the actual improvement needs. And that would have to do, if at some future date, Lot 2 existing would have the same condition if it was developed, and Tract C is if you put residential in there, will it accommodate the future traffic? That would be the same condition in either case.
Oh, thank you. I when it's an opportunity, I'd like to ask Mr. McLaughlin the same question, but thank you, Ms. Wilbur. Any other questions, Mr. Freak?
Through the chair, thank you, Ms. Wilbur. If I could summarize some of the comments from the public, it sounds like there's a lot of representatives from the Northeast Community Council that don't agree that the relocation of the creek is what you say it is, but appear to have some concerns that it's a hidden subterfuge to eventually punch through DeBar Road, and it seems to me that there is an issue here with respect to the level of information that some of the folks have, and some folks that appear to have a lot of information are still unhappy with it. And here's the question. What impact would this project experience if it were delayed in order to allow a better or more communication between CRW and its client and the residents who appear to have some concerns?
Well, project management engineering has made the commitment to continue working with a citizens advisory group on this project. The impacts of postponing or delaying it, you could look at it a couple of different ways. We do have grant funding for the creek relocation. It's tentatively scheduled for 2010. There is the potential loss of grant money, and that creek would not be relocated. And the city does have the option of selling the lots the way that they are now.
Follow-up question. Can I drill down on that just a little bit? I mean, is this, I want to know, I guess I want to understand whether this loss of grant money is a real threat or a perceived threat.
I would have to defer to Russ with PM&E.
And more specifically, does the project have to be done by sometime in 2010 in order for the grant money to be available, or just kicked off sometime between 2010 and before you leave the hot seat, Ms. Wilbur, I'm not talking about from my own perspective, I don't know how much of a delay would be involved, but my assumption is that further outreach with the community council could be accomplished in a matter of a couple months, if not a quarter. And that's my assumption when I talk about a postponement. So, and if you have any comments on that, I'd appreciate it, and then I'd like to hear about the grant money too.
I would just like to reiterate again that this is a 60-month phased process. So if the land swap happens, there are a lot of ifs with the land swap for this becoming parkland. Again, the Platting Board can't decide land uses here. They can only look at the plat. It is consistent with Title 21. It is consistent with the comp plan. We aren't changing the uses. And it's a 60-month phased plan. If the park land swap goes through, as petitioners, we certainly have no objections to that. This plat will not preclude that one way or the other. It does, if it stays the same or if it goes through, that's not going to preclude the park land swap. So I would just like to remind the Platting Board of that process can still move forward, and we're not looking at finalizing for 60 months, and it is phased. It's probably not quite as direct as you wanted, but...
No comment. Was another gentleman going to speak about the grant money issue?
Yeah, my name is Ross Oliver, and I'm the project manager for PM&E on this project. As far as the grants, we do have multiple grants on this, some from DEC and a couple other sources, and at least one of them we've already had one extension, and we are allowed one extension on, one-time extension on. And I'm not aware of all the timeframes for the different grants, but I do know we have at least 3 different grants involved with this project. And then they also all involve matching municipal funds as well to different levels of percentages.
So what's the first, if I may follow up through the chair, I'm sorry, what's the first deadline that you're striving to meet for this one grant that's already been expended?
I think the first one is December of 2010, December of the coming year.
To do what?
To have the creek substantially complete, which is can be a lot of different things, whether we have the bed moved, and it doesn't mean we have to have water flowing, it means we have to have a lot of the construction itself, the actual dirt work portion of the project done, and then we can come back in the next spring and get landscaping and all put in place. And remember, it depends on the dollar figure that's been expended at that time. We can use the older grants first and work our way through to the newer grants.
No,
You done?
no, I'm done. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Oswald or Ms. Wilbur? Mr. McLaughlin, did you have something to say?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to respond to Mr. Krieger. Ms. Wilbur spoke to the fact that this would be a phased plan, 60-month approval. One thing that she didn't mention is that the petitioner, in this case the municipality, could choose to not record the plat over 60 months. They could choose to abandon the plat or not fulfill the conditions, and it would never be recorded, and this would not proceed. That's if that were to be some sort of benefit, they could choose to do that. But what she said earlier is absolutely true, that the recordation of the plat doesn't have anything to do with future land deals. Also, if I may respond to Ms. Stolpe's question, her question was what sort of improvements would be required along DeBar Road, and Ms. Wilbur spoke to the section of DeBar Road that is not built, will not be built with this plat. The part that is built may need some improvements. I'm not sure what type of road it is now, 24-foot recycled asphalt, maybe. The project management, engineering, and traffic and non-motorized transportation coordinator all visited the site and felt that it would be important as this Track C, which is Lot 2 presently, could be developed at any time, that it would be appropriate to have a sidewalk there, and that would be required right-of-way improvement. So on page 2 of the packet, under findings, 2A, the last sentence of 2A, it says project management engineering comments. This is a 2A last sentence on page 2. It says, the petitioner shall resolve the need to upgrade DeBar Road from Boston Street to the eastern portion of Track C to municipal standards, including drainage and walkway improvements. So that's the improvements that are possibility in this case. Thank you.
Mr. Krieger?
Yep. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sorry to keep occupying the... But since you volunteered some information, Mr. McLaughlin, I want to push back a little bit. What impact, from your perspective, would obtain if the Platting Board tonight postponed action on this?
I guess the Planning Board would have to come up with some sort of justification for postponement, and would also have to consider what would be gained by postponing it. As the petitioner stated, this plat was originally submitted and scheduled for a hearing over a year ago. So the notion that the Community Council was surprised by this, I just don't understand that.
Well, I understand that it's our obligation to make sure we don't make irrational decisions, but we've got a lot of people here tonight who said that They didn't have a chance to participate. They want to have a chance to participate. They don't know what's going on. I don't think it's the Platting Board's obligation to try to educate the community about the merits of a project. I think it's the municipality or the petitioners, and it doesn't appear as though that has occurred yet, at least from my perspective. So the question again to you is, if time is what's needed for that to occur, what is the impact on the project from postponing it?
Through the chair, my understanding is that the project team has engaged the community over the last, at least a year about the impacts and the design of what's at issue here is defining lot boundaries, and this has been shared with the community council, and that's all that's at issue is a plat. Those people who passionately oppose this plat, for whatever reason, they're not going to change their minds through a month of community engagement. I don't think that if the project management engineering and their consultants spent more time in front of the community council than they already have, that the people present here would change their minds about this plat. I could speak on and on about this, but that's really all I have to say.
I'll leave it to other members of the board to follow up if anybody has a follow-up question on that.
Anyone else wishes to speak?
Madam Chair.
Ms. Stolpe.
I'll weigh in on this, Mr. Krieger. What I'm hearing, Mr. McLaughlin, and I place value in what you're telling us, what I'm hearing is a disconnect between the and what I'm hearing not only is a disconnect between the neighborhood and a governmental entity, but I'm also hearing really an almost painful plea for a park, and they're afraid that's going to go away if we take the action that's been recommended to us. And I think Mr. Krieger has just been awesome tonight in helping us start to get a grip on this. So that's where my concerns are. I'm always concerned when community councils when there's that disconnect with the neighbors. And so I guess I would respond to your question with the comment that what would be gained by a postponement could be a coming together of the minds on both sides of the issue about how best to resolve it. I'm always so much more comfortable when dealing with the neighbors that equal value is placed on their needs for the neighborhood as there is for the governmental entity.
Through the chair, Ms. Stolpe, thanks for your comments. I just wanted to say that the municipality is paying what I've read is paying somewhere over around $20,000 a month to carry this property. The municipality could sell these lots as is today. They could be developed as is, as they are. The idea was that this is an opportunity to protect the creek with greenbelt and to implement this stream restoration plan. The reason why the municipality, the public, is undertaking this effort to plat is not to to create headaches for the Platting Board or for the community. It is simply an opportunity to create this greenbelt and stream protection area. If they didn't want to protect this stream and implement this larger community-wide plan to restore creeks, then they would not be doing this plat. They would be selling the property as is. And this idea that DeBar Road has something to do with this plat is also flawed. The code allows transportation facilities to cross through and over stream protection easements and setbacks. So DeBar Road has nothing to do with this. DeBar Road could be built through the stream protection easement. This project is not seeking to relocate the stream, the section of the stream that is in DeBar Road. So DeBar Road is not a part of it. I think that it would make sense actually to move the stream fully within the Greenbelt Tract rather than risk it being piped or losing grant funding for the opportunity to do this right. But that's not at issue tonight.
Ms. Moses?
Madam Chair, first I'd just like to make a disclosure of fact that the Ms. Phillips, who spoke on behalf of the Northeast Community Council, and I work in the same office. I don't live in the area. We've never spoken about this. There's no gain, but just to disclose. And secondly, I'd like to comment on Mr. Krieger, Ms. Stolpe, and just their comments and comments of the staff. It appears to me, and maybe there can be some board discussion, but considering postponement based on community comments about land use aren't within the power or boundaries of this board, and if we refer to page 1 with what this case is, there isn't a consideration, if you will, to be given to how this property will be used or what road. And of course, I give a lot of weight to the comments of the public, but I also become fearful when the board veers away from what governs these decisions, which are code and Title 21, not emotional sentiment. So just to go on the record and comment that the request on the petitioner is not to develop, if you will, versus make the property a park. It is to, vacate, subdivide, and so I'd like to remind the board of that.
Any other questions of staff? Any other questions? And we'll close the public hearing. The matter rests with the board. May I have a positive motion, please? Mr. Creek. Second by Ms. Moses. That's okay. Yeah.
My microphone wasn't on. I'm sorry. I'm going to move to postpone action on this matter for a period not to exceed 60 days in order to allow whatever discussion might occur in those 60 days and then have it set on again before the Platting Board 2 months from at the next meeting 2 months hence or 60 days from now. Period.
I seconded. Oh, Carol. Okay. Speak to your motion, please.
Well, I don't know if this is the right thing to do or not, but I want to put it on the table as a motion for discussion. I didn't get an answer from staff as to what would really happen if we postponed it for for 2 months, and I know staff is passionate that the project should go forward, but I didn't hear a doomsday scenario that it can't happen if we don't act tonight on it. I didn't conclude from the grant expiring in December of 2010 that if board didn't act tonight, the grant monies would be lost. And I also don't know whether you have to have a project constructed by that time or simply break ground by that time. And I appreciate Ms. Moses's comments that it's not our job to sort out issues that aren't before us, and I agree that land use isn't before us, but I do think that we have these public hearings for a reason, and one of the reasons is we got people showing up who either know what's happening and want to prevent development, period, or don't know what's happening and might favor it if they knew the alternatives. And I don't agree with Mr. McLaughlin that, well, it's not a matter of disagreement. I think that there's a possibility that people could have this communication and then come back and say, we're still against it, in which case we look at that as merits. But we have people who apparently are claiming, at least, that they didn't have a chance to weigh in on this, and I think that is a concern. I don't know if it's, from my perspective, I would balance it against the need to get this going this month. So that's my comments in connection with the motion. It's also my understanding that this motion were not approved, that we would move forward to the next motion, which might be to approve the variances and approve the plat. That we don't have to end our discussion if this particular motion is denied, then the next motion would be, well, do you want to support this plat or not? That's my understanding of the parliamentary aspect of it.
Ms. Stolpe.
I will be supporting Mr. Krieger's motion, and I think I've already expressed my concerns. I do think it's important for the neighbors and the community to work together to solve the problem. It seems to me that that's the best way to move forward. I don't see any harm in delaying for 60 days. It would be time enough for the community councils and the neighbors and the appropriate people in the community to work together. And I quite agree with Mr. Krieger that when it then comes before us again, even if they haven't been able to resolve their differences, we will have the satisfaction of knowing that all avenues have been explored. And I just don't see why a 60-day delay would impact to any great degree moving forward on this project as the community wants to.
Mr. Story.
I just want to go on, Madam Chair, just on record to say that I plan on not supporting the delay of the plat. I feel that the petitioner has fulfilled the requirements of Title 21, and I think it is our obligation and our responsibility to follow Title 21. I think the public has had ample time to respond to the plat, and it sounds like between the consultant, the petitioner, PM&E, and the public, they have had a chance to discuss the issues. It sounds like the issues are they wanted a park and the petitioner wants to create a green belt. It doesn't sound like they will come to an agreement on that. I think what the petitioner is doing is the right thing for this property based on what they've presented in front of the board. And again, I plan on not supporting the motion.
Mr. Young.
Thank you. I too am not going to support this motion, and I believe that the arguments tonight were not arguments from the community about the technical aspects of this, but were arguments about a park, which is something that we're not able to decide as a body. And I believe the technical merits have been addressed, and so I'm not going to support this motion.
Ms. Moses?
Madam Chair, I know it's a surprise, but I will not be supporting this motion either. And I do invite Mr. Krieger and Ms. Stolpe during, if we have a discussion period on this, to point out to me, maybe by memory, in the comments by the public that would lead us to believe that even if this passed tonight, that 4 months down the road, this couldn't be a park if everybody agreed. To me, the actions tonight don't seem to change what the community wants of the property based on the petitioner's request. So I will not be supporting the motion.
That leaves me, and I will not be supporting the motion either. I think that our actions tonight will not preclude this area being a park, nor would it mandate that there would be discussion between the parties. So since there is disagreement, we need to vote mechanically. Okay, the motion does not pass, and so we will move forward with the actions requested. May I have a positive motion on the vacation, please?
We don't have the screen up yet.
Yeah.
For.
Are we done voting? On the floor? Okay, all right. You can do it. Ms. Moses.
Thank you. Madam Chair, in the case S-11700-1 Muldoon Estates subdivision, I move to approve the vacation request of a 10-foot wide telephone and electrical easement subject to relocation of the easement in a different location and recording of a suitable replat within 60 months, noting a change. Oh, thank you. If I may, I'll reread that. I move for the approval of the vacation of a 10-foot wide telephone and electrical easements within 14th Avenue, subject to relocation of the easement in a different location and recording of a suitable replat within 60 months, noting the change correction of 18 to 60. Do I need to do each one individually?
Is there a second? Mr. Young seconds. Ms. Moses, would you speak to your motion?
I think the discussion during the last motion pretty much provides for my position.
Any other discussion? Mr. Krieger.
Yep. On the, just a suggestion for a friendly amendment on that, within 14th Avenue, I think the intent was within the 14th Avenue dedication, as opposed to the entire length of 14th Avenue. If we're going to clarify it, we might as well try to, I think that's less than the entire 14th Avenues where the T&E easement's being proposed to relocate.
Anyone else wishing to discuss the motion? Is there an objection to the motion? If not, the motion passes and the vacation is approved. Clarification. Okay. Next item. Ms. Moses.
In the case S-11700-1, Muldoon Estates subdivision, I move for approval of the vacation of 25-foot wide stream maintenance and protection easements on both sides of Chester Creek subdivision. Subject to obtaining a conditional letter of map revision from the Federal Emergency Management Agency and the recording of a suitable replat within 60 months.
Is there a second? Mr. Young. Ms. Moses, will you speak to your motion, please?
Again, my earlier comments, I think, provide for my reason, my motion, support of my motion.
Any other comments? Any objection? Seeing none, the motion passes and the vacation is approved. Next item. Have to be a positive motion.
Right.
Ms. Moses.
Madam Chair, do I need to state the case number each time, or?
No.
Okay. Same case. I move for the approval of a variance from AMC 21.85.030, improvements requirements by improvement area for DeBar Road.
Along the northern bound.
Along the northern boundary of Tract C.
Is there a second? Mr. Young seconds. Would you speak to your motion?
Yes. I do not intend to support my motion. It does not seem, this request does not seem to meet the minimum requirements for a variance per Title 20, per the municipal vacation policy.
Any discussion?
Should we have a vote on this since there's a motion to grant the variance and then the opposition, I think, don't we need to vote yea or nay on this? Okay.
Any discussion? Would approve the variance. Yes.
I'm going to vote against approving the variance so that the recommendation of the department to deny the variance takes effect. Yeah.
So. Yes. That motion fails, and the variance is denied. Next item.
Case S-11700-1, Muldoon Estates subdivision. I move for the approval of the plat for 60 months.
Wait, the base plan.
Oh.
Right here.
It's case 2.
I'm flipping back and forth. Pardon me, I skipped. I'd like to amend my motion. I move for the approval of the phase plan.
And Ms. Stolpe seconds. Any discussion? Any objection? Phase plan is approved, and now moving on to the plat. Ms. Moses.
700-1 Muldoon Estates subdivision. I move for approval of the plat for 60 months, subject to recommendations 1 through 13 with the following changes and additions. The addition of condition 14 to read, remove the label of a 7-foot snow storage easement, with the condition number 2 to read, provide 10-foot wide telephone and electrical easements as required by ACS and CEA. Condition number 4 to read, resolve the need to enter into a subdivision agreement with private development to A through D remaining the same.
Is there a second? Ms. Stolpe seconds. Ms. Moses, would you speak to your motion, please?
I intend to support the motion. Again, my previous comments, I think, lend support, and I think it meets all the criteria.
Any discussion? Mr. Krieger. Sorry.
Yeah, I was daydreaming there a little bit. There was a suggestion that condition number 2 be tweaked. Did that get in there? Something about adding CEA effort?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
okay.
she did that.
Well, I'm going to support the motion somewhat reluctantly, but I think given the number of folks that are here tonight, the number of board members who are voting tonight, it would make it, I think it's unfortunate that the matter came before the board without apparently enough dialogue to persuade some folks that this was a good idea. I think it ultimately is a good idea. And I think that there's a political solution, and I'll tell this to the members of the audience, I think there is a political solution if the community council is unhappy with the approval of the plat. As Mr. McLaughlin pointed out, the municipality doesn't have to record the plat for 60 months, so there's avenues of recourse to the community if they think that this isn't the right route to go and that there should be a park for the entire 28 acres or that some other solution should be adopted. And that because I don't think the board's action tonight precludes that, I will be able to support the motion.
Mr. Young?
Thank you. I would like to propose a friendly amendment, which I believe would be number 15, and that would be to resolve with PM&E the adequacy of the vegetation buffer on the west side of Tract B and the east side of the creek in that area.
Could you just make that as an amendment?
Yes.
Appreciate that.
Okay. I'd like to add that as an amendment.
Is there a second? Oops. Technical difficulties. Could you restate your amendment, please, Mr. Young?
Yes. The amendment is to resolve with project management and engineering the adequacy of the vegetation buffer west of Track B and east of the proposed creek changes in the same area.
Is there a second? Ms. Stolpe seconds. Would you speak to your motion, Mr. Young?
Yes. I believe that the 25-foot setback requirement that the municipality uses is an arbitrary number. There are engineering equations that are easily and readily available to design vegetation buffers, and because of the steepness of the ridge that runs north and south or trends north and south in Track B, the slope, if the slope gets disturbed for any reason during development, that could cause an impact to the creek. And PM&E is more than capable of determining if there's an adequate buffer.
Any other discussion? Any objection to the motion? Seeing none, the motion passes, and a 15th condition is added to the motion on the floor. And we're back to the original motion, which is approval of the plat. Is there any discussion?
I am going to support this motion. I believe that...
Is his mic on?
Thank you. Still learning the buttons. I am going to support this motion. I believe that mitigating potential flood damage is very important. I believe that improving the salmon habitat is a benefit to the community and to the environment. And the adequacy of the existing crossing across Muldoon, I think, is going to be greatly improved by relocating the stream, so I'm going to support this for those reasons.
Any other discussion? Ms. Moses.
Madam Chair, I'm going to support the motion too, although I guess I just want to go on record by saying I'm not sure I see the need for the addition of 15, although I understand Mr. Young's comments. But when I look at page 24 of our packet, looks like a pretty good list of people that were involved in or are involved in the planning. So that may just be, kind of an overlap.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Is there any objection to the motion? Seeing none, the motion passes and the plat is approved for 60 months. Wishes of the board for a break or not? Break? Yes? Okay. We'll have a 15-minute break.
How long?
15.
Okay.
Next case is case S11777-1, Frank Dixon, I think that's right, I don't think there's a Dickinson in it, subdivision. Could we have the staff's presentation, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Spenard Community Council voted unanimously to support this plat and variance. There were numerous public hearing notices that were mailed to the department in support of the reversion acreage and the variance. This plat is reversion to acreage of lots 10, 11, and 12, Block 2, Frank Dixon subdivision per plat P-135A, creating one lot from those three containing 18,750 square feet. A variance is requested seeking relief from the requirement to dedicate an additional 5 feet for Cope Street right-of-way. The petition site is located west of Spenard Road between Northern Lights and Benson Boulevards. Cope Street adjoins the east petition site boundary. The property is vacant. The purpose of the plat is to combine 3 lots to create a building site, to construct a building to relocate Blaine's Art Store. Project management engineering does not require any improvements to adjoining rights-of-way, including Cope Street. A variance from AMC 2180-010 dedication streets and from AMC 2185 Table A right-of-way width is requested, which, if granted, would allow the plat to be recorded without dedicating an additional 5 feet for Cope Street. There's no objection from municipal agencies to the granting of this variance. The Cope Street was dedicated with a 50-foot right-of-way. A minimum of 36 feet of street section is needed from back of curb to back of curb to accommodate 2 lanes of traffic in this location, so 50 feet is ample right-of-way. The department recommends a condition number 3, which which requires the petitioner to provide a 5-foot public use easement along the east property boundary if Cope Street were ever to be reconstructed and the right-of-way would need to be widened, then they would have that opportunity through a public use easement. The department recommends approval of the variances from dedication of streets and right-of-way width for Cope Street right-of-way. The department also recommends approval of the plat for 18 months, subject to conditions 1 through 7 on pages 7 and 8. The department would like to make one change to the conditions as they're written. Condition 2B on page 7 says provide 5-foot wide water easement. We would like it to say provide a water easement and to remove the words 5-foot wide. This is because AWU, the petitioner's already worked with AWU on this question, and the water easement may not need to be 5-foot wide. It may be less. So leaving it to AWU and the petitioner to work out satisfies the desires or the needs of the planning department, simply stating provide a water easement and then continuing on. That's all we have. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions of staff? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing and hear from the petitioner.
Madam Chairman, board members, my name is Kenneth Lang. I'm here this evening in behalf of the petitioner, who is also with me, Renee Haig, is the owner of Blaine's. In this case, Mr. McLaughlin has explained this is a simple re-subdivision of 3 lots into 1 lot with a variance. Blaine's has been a fixture in the same location for over 50 years, and Mrs. Haig has been able to acquire these nearby lots so she can build a larger building and keep her business in the same neighborhood. A partial building permit has been issued, and the remainder of it depends on the outcome of tonight's hearing. Primary issue before you is the variance request, and as Mr. McLaughlin stated, all of the reviewing agencies have agreed with the staff that it should be granted, and in addition, the two community councils have shown support, along with over 40 written comments that are in your packet. To address the technical issues, Cope Street is less than 300 feet long. It runs from Northern Lights to Benson. It's located between Spenard Road and Arctic, so it gets little traffic, most of the traffic going to Spenard Road. Subdivision was platted in 1949. The street was constructed shortly after that time, and it's served the public since then. Cope Street was repaved just 2 years ago, and the 50-foot wide right-of-way was adequate for 2 travel lanes, 2 parking lanes, and a sidewalk on each side. The petitioners agreed to grant a 5-foot public use easement for future development if necessary. And finally, the petitioner needs the entire lot as it presently exists to have room for her building, the required parking, and the required landscaping. Just as a side note, this will be one of the first sites developed under the new municipal guidelines using rain gardens to dissipate water runoff. And for these reasons, we feel a variance is necessary. I was going to say we're in agreement with the staff recommendations. I'd like to discuss them during rebuttal, but it doesn't look like rebuttal is going to be necessary tonight. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Or we would.
You have 7 minutes for rebuttal. Are there any questions of Mr. Lang? I guess no.
Then as part of the under the staff recommendations, you can leave it in, but 2A has been resolved. The redundant service lines have been disconnected. Mr. McLaughlin talked to you about eliminating 5-foot wide on 2B, and other than that, we're in agreement with the rest of them. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone wishing to speak? Anyone from the public wishing to speak in case S11777, Frank Dixon subdivision? Anyone at all? Okay, seeing none, do you have anything else you'd like to say, Mr. Lang? Okay. Then we close the public hearing and the matter rests with the board. Can I have a positive motion, please? Mr. Krieger.
In the case of S11777-1, Frank Dixon subdivision, move to approve the variance from AMC 218010 and AMC 2185, Table A, for Cope Street right-of-way.
Is there a second? Ms. Stolpe seconds. Would you speak to your motion, please?
I'm going to support the motion. It looks as though there was some design, if not some, at least design and apparently plan review done that had envisioned one size of a building, and then, according to at least one of the public comments, the reason for the variance has to do with noncompliance with a regulation that didn't exist when the design work was being done. So I don't know how big the building has to be, but it seems to be that it's consistent with the variance requirements. So I will support the motion for a variance.
Any discussion? Any objection to the motion? Seeing none, the motion passes and the variance is approved. Moving on to the plat.
Move to approve the plat for 18 months, subject to conditions 1, 2B revised to delete the words 5-foot wide, and conditions 3 through 7.
Is there a second? I don't have a motion yet. Ms. Stope seconds. Mr. Krieger, would you speak to your motion?
I'll support it and also congratulate the petitioner on having 40 loyal customers. I don't remember seeing so many people weigh in favor of a proposal.
Yeah, when I first looked at all those comments, I thought, oh, my word. And then they're all positive. Is there any objection to the motion? Seeing none, the motion passes and the plat is approved for 18 months.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Mariana Gonzalez, all kinds of people.
Madam Chair, here. I just want it noted that I won't be here for the January meeting, and I won't be here to respond to any email asking if I'm going to be here. So I just wanted you to know I'd be gone.
Any persons to be heard? Any board member comments, reports? Motion to adjourn? Okay, we're adjourned.
I'm sorry.
Uh-huh.
Carol moved it.
Oh, who moved?
Carol did? Okay.
Just pick anybody.
Yeah, just pick it. They'll all agree.